Welcome to the Daily MBA, where business wisdom is served fresh and fast, straight from one of the top MBA programs in the world. I'll give you summaries of my lectures and readings, as well as the most important insights gained from an MBA, so you can apply all of this knowledge in every business. Let's get started. In today's episode, I'm going to give you a guide for understanding the causes of the stress that usually occur in all of the process when you're handling operations. So the first one that you should remember, and it's the worst enemy of any operations management, is variability. Because when things are changing, this is going to be your worst enemy because things are unpredictable and therefore your entire process will be modified. But what we have to understand is that there are two types of variability. On the one hand, there is first order variability, which is going to mean there is a supply and demand mismatch. So that means you have periodically varying demand that is going to be changing the mean. The second order variability is going to imply that you have supply and demand uncertainty. And so this one's a little harder because it doesn't mean that it's changing, but that you have randomness around the mean. And so that's why they are called like this: first order variability and second order variability, because you first must address the first order effect before you start worrying about the second order. Because the first order variability is going to be something that you can control a little bit more, since it's just a supply and demand mismatch. Since this is still a little bit in our hands, we can try to prevent first order variability. And then once we have that covered, we can look at how to address uncertainty, which is second order variability. So let's start talking about the first order variability. And this is going to be usually referred to as a variability that will lead demand to exceed capacity. And what this does is that usually customers have to wait long lines, they have to defect, so they will get out of the line. They will have to bulk, which means like you don't even get in the line as a customer because it's so long. Or you will get blocked. Maybe you can't even get in the line because the amount of people that's out there. And so even though I'm just talking about lines right now, this could be also considered with products that you have to wait a long time in order to get them. It can be also perceived with services. So the effects are going to be bad. And what we have to consider is that the people waiting, which I told you in my last episode, we're going to call them inventory, are usually going to be measured by having your total inflow minus your total outflow. So the amount of people that are coming in minus the amount of people that are going out. The ones in the middle, the ones remaining, are of course the ones waiting. But a key thing here would be determining what is their waiting time. And so for knowing their waiting time, we're going to use, again, a little bit of the law that I gave you, Little's law. So we'll take the average inventory, so the average number of people waiting, divided by the throughput. And last time I told you throughput is going to be the rate. So this is going to give us the amount, usually, that people are waiting. And this is going to be something that you should do no matter which service or good you are providing, because waiting times are horrible and they usually lead customers to be unsatisfied. So if you can minimize waiting time, whether that is in a call center, whether that is giving out a service, whether that is producing something and handing it to people, this is going to make people happy. And it's one of the reasons why Amazon has such a big success with their Prime feature, for example. You don't even have to wait for 2 days to have your things delivered right at you. So always minimizing waiting time is going to be something that you want to keep in mind. And so solutions that you're going to be considering for first order variability are going to be setting capacity at an average demand and also build inventory in low season. So what does this mean? Let's imagine I am a factory that's producing sweaters. And I know that sweaters are very popular in the winter and not very popular in the summer. What I should do is just set the capacity of my machines at an average demand and just produce year-long the exact same thing. So what this is going to create is that during the summer, this production levels are going to allow me to build up inventory, and then in the winter, when it's starting to get cold, people are going to be buying up the sweaters that I had as a safety capacity, as a safe inventory. But then I don't have to overproduce more. I can just keep producing at that same capacity. So that's one of the solutions that you might consider. The second solution would be setting the capacity at high for high season and delivering more, and then low for low season. So this is only feasible if you can change your capacity levels very fast and you can start adapting to clients. So if we continue again with my sweater example, I would set the capacity low for summer production because I won't be needing the sweaters. And then I would probably put double the capacity in the winter because I'm going to be needing more by then. The last and third solution would be more of an intermediate solution, so it's kind of mixing both. You're going to be holding inventory, but also increasing demand. And so here, the important factors that you should consider is first, do you have the flexibility to do these changes, to start producing more when people ask for more or producing less when people ask for less? And then the other thing that you should consider is your inventory holding costs. So how much does it cost you to have inventory waiting to be sold? Because if those costs are very high, then probably you would prefer just having higher capacity when it's high demand and lower capacity when it's low. But if inventory holding costs are low, then technically you don't care about having this amount of sweaters stacked up until somebody arrives and you want to sell it to them. So what you should consider is that capacity will always be a trade-off with inventory costs. And this is a rule of thumb that you can always consider. When you have high inventory costs, you're probably going to be producing at low capacity because you don't want to be building up on so much inventory. But then if you have low inventory costs, it's the opposite. You want to have high capacity. So the optimal capacity for you and for your company might be given as a function of the inventory cost over the capacity cost ratio, because this will show you which one is more expensive. Is it changing capacity or is it holding the inventory and having it waiting to be sold? Now, when we have to address the second order variability, this one's the ones that's going to be a little bit harder because now we're not talking about overproducing or underproducing. Here we're talking about uncertainty. So in this case, lines would form even when there's enough capacity just because uncertainty will create a line. So random things happen and you can't control those. And what we are going to see is that second order variability can be split in two different types. First, you may have arrival variability. So this is going to be variability around the demand, how many people are arriving into your store, arriving into your software, arriving into your company. All of this is going to be the demand variability, but it's usually abbreviated as the CVA, so arrival. And it's considered the coefficient of variation of inter-arrival time. So what I just said, but in elaborate jargon of operations. And on the other hand, we already saw the demand. Now we'll have to look at variability of supply. So this one's called the service variability, so CVP, and is the coefficient of variation of the process or the service time. So here you're not considering how variable it's going to be people that are arriving into your store, but how variable are going to be basically your workers if they can give all of the time the same quality, the same amount of things, or if the process is going to have some glitches. So when we're looking at this, we can consider usually numbers that are either 1, higher than 1, or lower than 1. So when you have an arrival variability that's equal to 1, it means that arrivals are independent. And when you have service variability that's going to be equal to 1, it means that the job is going to be customer specific. So this is kind of setting up the basis. Now, if arrival variability is higher than 1, it means it's more random. So let's imagine this might be teens at a mall. It's going to be extremely random, and you can't predict how many teens are going to be appearing at a mall. But if you look, on the other hand, at service variability, this also means it's going to be more random. So this might appear with a job that has multiple parts that must be done simultaneously, for example. But we also can have the opposite, so a variability that's lower than 1. And so this is going to be very good because this will reduce that variability. And so arrival variability that's lower than 1 might be, for example, appointments. So when you have your doctor's appointment, dentist appointment, you actually know who's coming at what time, and you can be prepared because there will be no surprises. Similar with the service variability, you can know what things are going to happen, when are they going to happen, if you have uniformity processing. So this is going to all reduce service and arrival variability. But the thing is, you can't always have it lower than 1. Most of the times it's going to be either 1 or higher than 1 just because the situations where you can control it are going to be very, very small. So the things that you should consider are maybe 2 approaches, having a pooled approach or a dedicated approach. So let's start understanding what each one of them means. If we do pool service, it means that there is just one line, technically, and the server that is available will attend whoever is next in line. So you may find this example in airports and security. You may find it in the call centers when you're calling for something and then the next available agent will appear to you. This is basically pool. So everybody's coming to the same line and whoever's next is going to attend it. You may have another approach, which is dedicated services, where you have different lines. And so you will have different dedicated servers for the different types of customers. And this, you might see it at the supermarket, for example, where you have to do one line for normal customers and one line for fast customers that are only buying 5 items or less, or 10 items or less. So this is going to be that we're separating the customers into different lines and we'll give them a dedicated service. So when do you use which? Usually pooled services will have shorter wait times, and dedicated servers will be more useful when the classes are very different in the service characteristics. So again, answer would probably be it depends, because it will vary depending on each business. But as I just said, pooling is usually going to have shorter wait times. And if you were paying attention before, I told you we should try to reduce wait times as much as possible. So that's why pooling is one of the most popular approaches in order to fix second-order variability. So let's do a deeper dive into pooling, because pooling will allow firms to achieve economies of scale, allowing them to keep less safety capacity and spread all of the fixed costs. There are 3 things that you could pool. You could pool across locations, across products, and across capacity. And what we have to know is that pooling an n amount of resources is going to reduce operating costs by a factor of square root of n. Okay, this is a mathematical factor, but it's going to be a rule of thumb because you can reduce costs by implementing pooling while also maintaining the same service level. And that's why it's usually the preferred approach. The last and final approach that you may find in order to reduce variability is when you have a sequence of queues. So this one, perfect example, it's going to be at Starbucks, where you have one person that's the one taking your order and another person that's preparing your order. So there may be different stations that are going to serve different types of queues. And this is going to help propagate variability a little bit, because the variability of station 2 will only depend on the variability of station 1. If I'm already taking orders, this person knows what's coming. The only one that has high variability technically would be only station 1. So sequential servers are going to be very helpful in reducing the time in the system, but only if it reduces the service time and or it reduces the variability. So in Starbucks, it works pretty good because you just enter and you're telling this ordering person what you want, and even though it's just one line, the other person that's serving or preparing your drinks can be fully dedicated to just doing whichever orders it is receiving from the first person. If we had many persons preparing and many persons attending, this would be a little bit more chaotic. And it wouldn't reduce service time most likely, and it also would increase variability. So that's why this approach here wouldn't work, and Starbucks has a very good process in this serving and preparation of drinks. What I want you to take away from this is that variability is going to be your worst enemy, but you must first address the first order variability, either through increasing capacity or increasing inventory, and then you can address second order variability by having either pooled or dedicated approaches and maybe even a sequence of queues. If you like this episode, make sure to give me a review and also share it with a friend that also wants to learn about business and improve its operations management. I'll see you next week.